Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and today I'm excited to finally make a Dragon Quest video. It's not like I've never made one before, but let's be honest, I spend so much of my time talking about Final Fantasy, but with recent years, I have been enjoying the Dragon Quest franchise more and more. While Dragon Quest XI was what pulled me into the fold, the continued and seemingly accelerated support of Dragon Quest titles in recent years have had me hooked without a fault. And now with the release of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD 2D around the corner, the announcement of Dragon Quest 7 Reimagined, and the ongoing expectation that Dragon Quest 4, 5, and 6 will be remade, I figured it's about time I gave Dragon Quest more of a stomping ground on my channel with this introduction video to how I've interacted with the franchise in the past and how I'm feeling about it as a whole. Now, my history with Dragon Quest is honestly a bit of an unfortunate one prior to Dragon Quest XI. When I was young, my family bought me a copy of Dragon Quest VIII, but their reason was not because it was something I wanted or that I asked for. My family didn't understand how to buy me games or RPGs. They didn't really know how to look for them. No, it was because it came with a demo of Final Fantasy XII, and they knew that I liked Final Fantasy. After beating that demo, I tried Dragon Quest VIII, and I got pretty far, but I was relatively unsure about it. I wasn't super drawn to the gameplay right away. I know it's a classic RPG, but when I was younger, the whole you pick everything for your turn and then the turn actually takes place based on your speed was never my favorite style of RPG. The sound effects all sounded right out of the NES and SNES era, and I couldn't help but keep going, hey, that's Trunks, every time I looked at Angelo. In fact, I noticed immediately the Toriyama art, as I was a huge Dragon Ball fan. I liked it, but it was still a bit odd for me seeing what looked like carbon copies of some of the Dragon Ball characters I already knew. So I actually never bought another Dragon Quest game after that, never asked for them as a gift or showed any interest in purchasing one in my youth. Little did I know that this game was a cultural phenomenon in Japan and a beloved franchise amongst RPG fans. I didn't know that it had a rumored vacation day for game releases in Japan, and that over the years, for any teeter-tottering that the Final Fantasy franchise saw worldwide, that Dragon Quest always remained a king in the East and still relatively loved everywhere else. I honestly thought it was just some franchise that somehow made it to 8 games. It's like people who saw Final Fantasy 7 and didn't know about 1, 2, and 3. 1, 4, and 5, or knew but didn't know that 4, 5, and 6 was 2, 5, and 3. You know what I mean. Over a decade would pass before the release of Dragon Quest XI, and let me tell you, that's a great game. Like, even just the original one before the S version left me with a gut feeling that all these years I've probably been making a mistake. Because while it did have modernization enough to get me in the door, like being able to move around and see the characters, and honestly, it was just fantastically written and had tons of content, it's a super whole game. If you haven't played it, trust me, it's well and indeed worth any price you're willing to pay for it. But I just thought maybe I had just written off Dragon Quest VIII a little too quickly and didn't even try to love it from the moment that I opened it. I just kept finding things that I thought were weird, not even that I didn't like, and that kind of, I made myself ruin the experience. I convinced myself it wasn't going to be for me before I played it. And Dragon Quest XI kind of made me see that I was being an idiot. Now, since then, I've played a number of Dragon Quest games, both mainline and side games. Monsters, Builders, which, by the way, that's seriously amazing. You should definitely play Builders if you haven't. Treasures, and of course, the recently released Dragon Quest III Remake. I never released my review video for it, but know that I genuinely loved it. It was a decent challenge with an easy-to-follow but fun story and tons of exploration. The vocation system was a satisfying iteration of the job system I've loved from other Final Fantasy games. And one thing that had always turned me off from some of the earlier Dragon Quest games when I was considering them when I was younger was seeing how many of them were first person, which I wasn't a huge fan of after getting tons of flashy animations from Final Fantasy over the years. But no longer did that really bother me much at all. It probably helps that games like Earthbound helped me ease into the idea better. I hadn't played that when I was young, and after playing it, it kind of made me realize that I didn't care that much about the first-person thing because the game was otherwise so good. I suddenly found myself desperately desiring the release of 1 and 2 HD. Like, the moment I finished 3, I was like, I need 1 and 2 immediately. Because we knew 1 and 2 were happening before I even beat 3. Like, they announced it beforehand. And I was hoping to see the continued remakes, re-releases of the remaining games that were old. And just, like Final Fantasies released 1 through 6. I don't even know how many times. Like, yeah, the Pixel remasters there, but there's like 11 versions of Final Fantasy 4, like 6 versions of Final Fantasy 1. Yeah, they've been doing that for years. But Dragon Quest, yeah, it's got re-releases and whatnot, but they've never felt so fresh. You know what I mean? It's always felt like they just did it for a while and then stopped after they had done it through like the mid 2000s to early 2010s, and I didn't get in the door at that point. It really took me till Dragon Quest XI. And honestly, after playing Dragon Quest III, it seemed like an easy expectation that they would probably remake the rest of 4 through 9. I mean, Dragon Quest III oversold expectations, and you know Square never says anything oversells expectations. That's like something that we make fun of. We've been making fun of that for about a decade at this point. 1 and 2 HD I'm expecting to do well as well, and they're bringing technology and lessons they've learned from other franchises they've worked with to make Dragon Quest even fresher. I mean, Dragon Quest 1 through 3 all use HD 2D, made most popular from the Octopath Traveler developers, whom Square absorbed last I checked. They also announced that Dragon Quest 7 would actually be using dioramas to build their environments for the reimagined version. This is just like in Fantasian, a game that Square Enix recently helped publish to a wider audience, but was originally developed by Final Fantasy's own father, Hironobu Sakaguchi. Also love that game. While it's not unexpected that we may see more Final Fantasy re-releases with similar technology at some point, heck, Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster does have an HD 2D scene with the opera, and it's phenomenal. Dragon Quest is the franchise incorporating evolutions in technology and game development while doing its best to stay steeped in tradition. The one thing that's been kind of unfortunate about Dragon Quest is that it's also been a franchise that's been a lot of quantity over quality. I mentioned a lot of those side games. There's also been a ton of mobile games, and Dragon Quest is one of those franchises where I wouldn't be surprised if they've been using the same models in the game for the last 10 years, maybe some with some additional smoothing in order to make it make sense on certain platforms. There's another mobile game that's like a roguelite RPG coming out, and I'm so beyond that I can't be asked to really care that much about that one. There's also been the meme about Dragon Quest XII, which they keep assuring us is definitely being developed, but honestly, that's a problem with Square AAA titles as a whole right now, and something I should probably talk about in its own standalone video, where it's kind of easier to get excited about these AA, HD 2D remade titles than it is to get excited about the AAA releases that get announced way too far in advance. Who knows when we'll see Kingdom Hearts 4? Who knows when we'll actually hear anything about Dragon Quest 12? Who knows when Final Fantasy 17 is going to happen, and 7 Remakes third part is still a couple years out at least, but at least we know that one's actually well into its own development. But games like Dragon Quest are able to be reproduced and redone and released at a pretty fair pace other than Dragon Quest XII. And because they are steeped in so much tradition, they're pretty easy to go back to and pretty easy to love as a whole. So it's why I'm trying to fill a little bit of the Square Enix void for me with Dragon Quest, with more of these titles. And trust me, there's a lot of Square Enix titles on the way that I'm excited for. But Dragon Quest is a franchise, and the more I get into it, the more I realize how much I missed as a kid. So I do want to be reporting on Dragon Quest news on this channel. I do want to be able to share my thoughts about Dragon Quest games as they're coming out and share my reviews and do anything like that. It's something that honestly, I just should have been doing all of this time. And while I have done it occasionally, I definitely haven't done myself a service with that one. And I've done you all a disservice by not talking more about it, because if you haven't been playing Dragon Quest, it really is great. Heck, I bought Dragon Quest X offline, which is an MMO that exists only in Japan, but I bought the Japanese offline version, and I was going to do a video on that, never did it. So maybe it's about time I find some time to get around to that, because that could be an interesting little experiment to talk about. Dragon Quest X, Square Enix's like forgotten MMO that still exists. Every time I go, they already have 3 MMOs. They're not going to develop a 4th. People go, 3? And I go, Dragon Quest X, and they go, they have that? Yeah, didn't you wonder where 10 went? You went right from 9 to 11? Yeah, most of you probably skipped everything up to 11 like I did. Hopefully not. But I just wanted to do this video as an introduction to my history with Dragon Quest and how badly I've kind of fumbled getting into the franchise as a whole, and use that as a lesson to tell you not to make the same mistake. Yeah, there's definitely some weird bits, and if you're kind of someone who struggles to deal with the more traditional old school RPG stuff, I don't think it's going to do anything that's going to really get you past those barriers. But they are fun games, and I definitely wanted to do my due diligence of introducing them more formally onto the channel. But that's my history with Dragon Quest. I want to know about your history with the Dragon Quest series in the comment section of the video below. Your first Dragon Quest game, your favorite Dragon Quest experience, or how Dragon Quest has affected you in the same way that I've talked about how Final Fantasy has affected me over the years. It's definitely something that I feel like we as people who play video games, when we grow up with a franchise, it kind of shapes a lot of who we are. And I love hearing those stories from other people as well. But that's going to be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned. I'll be doing just kind of general news videos about Dragon Quest stuff. I may cover some Dragon Quest 7 news that just came out. They did like a whole info drop, and anything about Dragon Quest 1 and 2 HD as it's coming up. I actually want to do more Square Enix news videos on the channel as a whole. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, take care.